I'm Chris Barton and I'm the chef for the DEANE House, and today we're going to be making roasted halibut with a green goddess sauce and summer vegetables, and for dessert we'll be making chocolate fondant, hazelnut praline mousse, and toasted hazelnuts. So we have some lovely West Coast halibut here, cut into portions for you already. What I typically like to do with my fish, I like to salt it. So by curing it lightly, what it does, it helps firm up the flesh a little bit, so when it cooks, there's less chance of falling apart, and it also helps season your fish beforehand, so it's not just seasoned on the outside when you salt it over the top. So what we do is you just take your fillets, give it a generous coating of salt. I mean, it doesn't have to be too crazy, all the way around, and basically put that in the fridge for about 10 minutes. Once it comes out of the fridge, basically all you're gonna do is get a bowl of cold water, a few ice cubes if it's not cold enough for you, and you're going to rinse your fish really well and just put it on a little bit of paper towel just to get rid of the excess water on it. So at the restaurant, we cure all of our fish, and it can be something that you do at home now going forward, and it's a great way to season your fish fully. And for other types of fish that are a little bit flakier, even more so than halibut, it's a great way to make sure it holds together. So things like more delicate, like say trout or something like that, if you cure it, do a little bit less time because it's a thinner piece, but that way it really holds together when you cook it so you don't have a mess in the frying pan. All right, next we're gonna be making our green goddess sauce. So what you have here is a combination of yogurt and sour cream and lots of fresh herbs. So typically lots of basil, parsley, tarragon, mint. We've got a little bit of garlic in there as well. And normally we put anchovies in it, but just for general appeal, we'll leave those out, and you can put a little bit of Worcestershire if you wanted to yourself. To make your sauce, we're basically gonna blend it until it's just warm, and then it's basically ready to go. So it's a great, simple sauce, and we're gonna put our sour cream and yogurt mixture into the blender. Next, we're just gonna add all of our herbs. So lots of fresh herbs. And now we're gonna blend that for probably a minute. We'll start on low. So after about, let's say 20 to 30 seconds, you'll see it's nice and bright and green. So we're gonna add a little bit of lemon zest, pinch of salt, and we're gonna blend that up a little bit more until it's just warm, room temperature. So once all the herbs have been blended in nice and lovely, you're gonna add a little bit of lemon juice, add it at the end. If you add it too early, it likes to discolor the herbs a little bit and it goes a little bit more darker green. Taste it as well first. There is quite a bit of acid in yogurt and sour cream. Once again, this is to your liking, so give it a taste first. See what it needs. It does need a little bit of, a little more acid for me. Squeeze a little bit of lemon juice in there, a little bit more salt. You want it nice and well seasoned. And just give it a quick stir again. We're going to get all our lovely summer vegetables ready to go with the halibut. It's important to kind of do this ahead of time, just because it might take you a little bit longer. Typically you could do it while the fish is cooking, but you're probably better off just to get yourself set up completely. It's very important that you're set up for cooking, and it makes it a lot easier. So our next step, we have snap peas. Quite straightforward. All you're gonna do is tip and tail them and take the vein out because it's quite fibrous. So basically, because it is the summertime, we always wanna try and get things that are in peak season. So right now, that's different types of peas. So it's not gonna be always the same ones you're gonna be getting every week, but it'll be a different variation of what's gonna be best available for that week. We're gonna do our snow peas. Pretty straightforward. Tip and tail them as well. There's not really any fibrous things. What works really well for snow peas as well? Scissors. That way you don't even have to, you just basically trim off out both sides, and they are ready to go. All your vegetables will be washed, but just give them another rinse before you use them, just to help liven them up a little bit too sometimes. We have some lovely heirloom tomatoes, depending on the shapes and sizes. If they're a little bit larger, we're just gonna quarter them. If they're a little bit smaller, just cut them in half. And last but not least, we're gonna do some radishes. Once again, these will vary based on what we can get available that are great. So we'll have different types of radishes all throughout the season. We're not even gonna cook these. We're just gonna put these on the end because they add great texture, a little bit of crunch, and they're just tasty radishes to go on the end. Important for radishes, you always kind of clean the top a little bit where the stems goes in the leaves, because that's where dirt likes to live. Clean that off a little bit. And for the radishes, we're probably, depending on the size, quarter them, half them, and you are ready to go. For your snap peas, we're just going to cut them a little bit smaller just for sake of when we warm them up and they're going to be slightly cooked. They'll cook evenly with the rest of things because snow peas will cook very quickly and a whole one of these will take a little bit longer to cook. That's why we're going to cut it down just a little bit smaller. So just I would cut them in 3. And then just put all your vegetables together, peas together. The radishes go in the same area, but we're going to put those in on the plate at the end. Tomatoes will go at the very end as well. Ideally, you want to get a non-stick pan that is oven safe. If you don't have one of those, you can use a stainless steel pan, probably most likely have at home. You just have to make sure it's hot enough. Make sure your fish is nice and patted dry. There's no excess water on the top, because what happens if that, when you put it in the pan with the oil, it'll splatter and you'll probably have a chance to burn yourself. So a little bit of neutral cooking oil. Put your fish the flattest, widest side down so it cooks the quickest. And you're going to cook that on the stove for 45 seconds to a minute. We are just going to take our fish and put it in the oven. Because not every fish fillet is going to be exactly the same thickness, it won't always cook evenly. Another thing that's important to remember is how cold the fish was when it went in the oven. If it was tempered to room temperature, it'll cook a lot faster as opposed to being fridge cold. So to tell you, say it cooks 9 minutes exactly every time, you won't be a consistent product for you. So the best way to test a piece of fish is to find yourself a thin metal skewer. A kebab skewer works really well. I mean, a cake, this is just a cake tester, just something that's metal. Don't use wooden, because if you use wooden, it doesn't conduct heat and you will have no idea what actually temperature the fish is on the inside. So you're gonna pull your fish out of the oven and you're gonna probe it into the side, into the thickest part of the fish. So when we probe the fish into the thickest part of the fillet, leave it there for 2 or 3 seconds just to make sure it picks up the temperature. Pull it out, and the best way to probe it, and you want to make sure that it's warm, is either use the bottom of your lip, because it's really sensitive there, or use the inside of your hand, because it's a really good, they're both sensitive skin areas and it'll be able to tell temperature better. If you put it on, let's say your fingertips or something, they're not going to be as sensitive and you won't be able to tell the temperature. So this is almost there. It's just barely warm, so we're going to put it in for another minute or 2, and now we're going to make our garnish that goes with our fish. So I've got good size sauce pot. Grab something that's wider than narrower, because it'll make your life a lot easier. You can even use a frying pan if you had to, but just make sure the sides are higher. That works best. And you're going to put a little bit of water, enough to cover the bottom of the sauce pot. Next, we're going to make a butter emulsion. So we've got some diced cold butter here. But you're going to drop it into your water that's simmering, and you're basically going to melt that and dissolve it to emulsify it all together. And once that's all together, next we will be adding our vegetables to it. So you just kind of swirl your pot a little bit, helps emulsify it. Make sure it's still hot enough, because if it's not hot enough, it'll just melt the butter. And as opposed to emulsify it in, you want a little bit of a simmer on your water. It will be too thin when you initially emulsify it together, which is fine, because what you do is once you put the vegetables in, by reducing it down, it'll cook the vegetables at the same time, and it'll thicken to glaze your vegetables nice and lovely. So once your water and butter's been dissolved, it should look like that. And next we're going to put our vegetables in, except for the tomatoes and the radishes. Our next step, we'll just add the tomatoes. We can put the radishes in too, but all we're going to do is just warm them through now. We're not going to cook anything. So tomatoes can go in, radishes as well. Another 30 seconds, and you're there. And now this is the time we're going to taste our butter emulsion. It should be very neutral right now, and you're going to season it with some salt. You'll probably need a decent amount of salt. But the trick is just keep adding salt and tasting it. It's well seasoned. Next, add a little bit of lemon juice, just for acidity, to go with the butter. To start, we're going to put some of the green goddess sauce on the bottom of the plate. Just spread it around, put lots on. It's really tasty. So there you have it, a lovely fillet of halibut, lots of summer vegetables around, a very nice summery warm sauce to go with it. Very light, refreshing. You'll feel good after eating this. Enjoy. For dessert tonight, we're going to be making chocolate fondant, which is a type of, well, it's basically chocolate lava cake. So to start for that, we're going to melt our 70% dark chocolate with our butter. We're going to put that over a double boiler, so just a pot with a little bit of water in it, and put it on medium heat. And our next step, we're going to flour our molds. What's that for? So when you, after you've baked it, you can easily knock out the fondant onto your plate and it won't be stuck in the cup. So you're gonna take a little bit of softened butter, just room temperature. You can put it in the microwave if it's cold, just soften up. A pastry brush, if you don't have a pastry brush, you can just use the butter paper from your butter and just grease the edge of the mold. It's best if you do a pastry brush. You can add a little bit more butter and then a little more flour sticks to it, and then it'll for sure come out of the mold then. I have a mixture of equal parts cocoa powder and flour, and that's what we're gonna use to line the mold. All you do is set yourself up with a little bit of parchment paper. It just stops you from making a mess in your house. And you're gonna basically tip all of that flour into it. The more you have, the easier it is. And you're just gonna sift it around, and then you're gonna knock it back onto the parchment, and then knock out the excess, and then you have a lined mold. All right, once your chocolate's been melted with your butter, just take a spatula and just stir it around. It doesn't need to be on the heat very long for it to melt completely. You don't want to leave it too long, or you'd scorch your chocolate, and then that will not work very well for you. So you can even, once it's come up to a boil, take the pot off the heat and then just leave it on to gently melt, and it does. Next step, you're going to take your eggs and your sugar and you're going to cream those together. It's important here when you put your sugar and your eggs together, you immediately stir them really well, or else your sugar will cook your eggs. All right, now it's changed color a little bit. It's quite pale yellow. Next step, we're going to take our small amount of flour. We're gonna whisk that in to our chocolate. And then after that, we're gonna take our eggs and we're gonna put that into our chocolate as well. So once it's all mixed together, make sure it's nice and silky and lovely. You don't want to whisk it too much though, just because you just keep beating up your flour. You just want to incorporate it. So our next step, we're going to put into our molds. We're going to be using a piping bag to put this in. I'll include one as well in your kit. It just makes it easier to get it inside the cup because it's a little bit thick, and it likes to make a mess when you're trying to get it inside the cup. So this will fix that. So to fill your piping bag, the easiest way is find something tall. It can be like a plastic cup like this, a Pyrex dish, and you basically want to fold your piping bag back on itself halfway, and you're going to put that inside your dish, just like that. And then you can fill it quite easily without having to hold it. Once inside your piping bag, all you're going to do is cut the tip. So once they're just set like that, we're going to pop them into an oven, 375 degrees, anywhere 12. It all depends on the size of your cup usually. So the best way to tell is, I'll show you, you'll jiggle it, and the center will be a little bit jiggly still, but all the rest will look like cooked cake. So we're going to pop this in our oven. What we have is some hazelnut praline. So it's just sugar that's been caramelized, hazelnuts, and then they blend it up until it's nice and smooth. So we're going to basically add that to cream, and then we're going to whip it up. We're going to add a little bit of salt to it as well. So add half your cream to start, just to get it nice and dissolved. It doesn't dissolve as easily if you add all your cream at once. So next, once you've got half the cream dissolved into it, you're gonna add the other half. So once you get it to there, it's quite soft, I'll just tighten it up. And there we go. We're also going to add just a pinch of salt because it's quite sweet, and the salt really makes it nice. And you'll set that aside for your fondants for when they come out. All right, once you've taken them out of the oven, to know that they're cooked, the best way is to look at the top of it, and you can see the outside looks like cake and the middle still looks a little bit like chocolate pudding. That's kind of you know when it's there. The best way to test too is give it a light jiggle. It should barely jiggle in the middle. If it's too jiggly in the middle, when you go to tip it upside down, it'll collapse on you and be basically a volcano, which is still nice, but you want to hold it together. So next step, use a cloth because the cups are going to be a little bit hot. You're You're gonna just run your knife around the outside, and then you're gonna tip it upside down on the plate. Once you've unmolded it onto your plate, you're gonna take a few scoops of your hazelnut praline cream. Take some toasted hazelnuts, put lots over top. So if you follow these steps, you'll get a great restaurant quality product. So I really encourage you not to skip any, and you'll be able to basically mimic a restaurant quality dish similar that we do at the DEANE house at home.